Let's look at the process of inspiration and just the process of inspiration. How did God inspire his word? With Moses, does God speak face to face? In Numbers chapter 12, God says of Moses, he says, Moses is not like the run-of-the-mill prophet. God says Moses is not a normal prophet. He says, normally with prophets, I speak to them in dreams and in visions. I speak to them in dreams and visions and things. With Moses, it's not like that. He says, with Moses, I go tete-a-tete. I go head-to-head. We go face-to-face. Panei al panei. Face-to-face with Moses. By the way, it's so face-to-face. When Moses comes down from the mountain, what's his face? Does anybody remember that? His face is like shining, and the people say, hey, Moses, you've been up talking to God. Like Moses, you just stay over there. And I don't like that shiny face, Moses. Cover that up, man. So Moses does what? Moses drops a veil over his face. He goes up to talk to God. He pulls the veil off. He comes down to talk with the people. He puts the veil on. Okay? So Moses is a prophet, and you get that kind of interaction with God. Normally, did God come down and tell the prophet, thus saith the Lord? And the prophet will quote, thus saith the Lord. Isaiah, Jeremiah, all the prophets, thus saith the Lord, Kol Amar Yahweh, and then they quote from the Lord. Okay? So God speaks to them in words, they reveal it. Now, by the way, did God speak in dreams? Did God speak in visions? Did God, appear to them in a fiery bush or, that kind of thing? So, prophets. Now, here's another way God spoke. God spoke in his Son. Jesus, then, as we said, becomes the incarnate Word. Jesus is the ultimate revelation of God, because what you got is the Word becoming flesh. And the Word, rather than being spoken, is now alive. And the Word now communicates to us how? Not just in words, but in deeds and miracles and incredible things that Jesus did. The Word becomes flesh, and now God incarnates himself in flesh. Can human beings go up to Jesus and punch him in the gut? Yeah. Okay. And you say, by the way, does anybody remember in the Garden of Eden? Did people in the Garden of Eden walk with God in the garden, talk with God? In the garden, yeah. And what happens after the fall is that cut off now. But Jesus comes back. In one sense, does Jesus Christ bring us back to the garden where God walks among us? But what do the people do? They beat on him. It's terrible. Okay, so Jesus, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, and the Word became flesh, dwelt among us. Beautiful passages in the New Testament and stuff. Now, some writers, however, did historical research. In other words, it wasn't God coming down, whispering, dictating something in their ear. Luke tells us, now, by the way, in the book of Luke, Luke's going to write a gospel about Jesus Christ. Did Luke ever meet Jesus Christ? Luke never met Jesus Christ. So then on what basis does Luke write a gospel about Jesus Christ? Well, Luke tells us where he got his data from. Where did Luke get his information from? Many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who were from the first eyewitnesses. Did Luke get his stuff about Jesus Christ? Did he get that from eyewitnesses? Does Luke know the difference between eyewitnesses and secondary witnesses? Yes. Is he a good historian? And he says, I got this stuff that's passed down through tradition from eyewitnesses. And he checks with eyewitnesses. He was not himself an eyewitness. He checks with eyewitnesses and servants of the word. Therefore, since I myself have carefully investigated, where does the book of Luke have come from? It comes from his careful investigations, talking and interviewing people with eyewitnesses. Everything from the beginning, it seemed good to me also to write an orderly account. Now he says, I'm going to order it for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know of the certainty of the things that you've been taught. So where did Luke get his stuff? Luke got his material largely from eyewitnesses that he interviewed. Okay, and he tells us that. Now what about this? Solomon, in Proverbs chapter 25, verse 1. Solomon wrote many proverbs. But who built the book of Proverbs? Was it Solomon? No. Partially, yes. But in Proverbs chapter 25, verse 1, it says, these are more proverbs of Solomon, so these are proverbs of Solomon, copied out by the men of Hezekiah. So Hezekiah, about 200 years, at least 200 years after Solomon, they had a book of a collection of Solomon's proverbs. The men of Hezekiah, the Bible tells us in 25:1, it says the men of Hezekiah copied these proverbs out from that bigger collection. Do you see how the Bible came then? They had a big collection of Solomon's Proverbs. They copied out, basically chapters 25 to 29 of Proverbs was copied out of that bigger collection. The men of Hezekiah did that 250 years after Solomon's time. Okay? So do you see that God inspires people in different ways? That's all I'm trying to show. God inspires people in different ways. And sometimes it's copyists and stuff. Here's one that Paul does. Paul, in Acts chapter 17, when he's on Mars Hill, and he's in Athens, okay, he's in Athens in Greece, and Paul says, he's walking around, he sees all these gods, and he says, hey, you guys are right. Because one of your poets has said, in him we live and move and have our being, as some of your own poets have said. Paul quotes Aratus, a pagan poet, and says what the guy said was right. By the way, is that in Scripture? In him we live and move and have our being, as your own poets have said. Paul quotes a pagan Greek poet, and that's in our Bible now. Okay? Did God inspire people in all sorts of different ways? Paul had that quote in his head, and he puts it down and says, no, that was right, what that guy said. And then it's under the inspiration of Scripture. So God inspired in different ways.